Deep within a mine, human workers report sounds of clanking chains and pained cries from down below. Chewed and mutilated bodies of folk turn up in a nearby river, and a new dwarf overseer, whose own dwarven miners only work the night shift, has been instrumental in putting down a slaver's ring in a daring night raid. What's going on? Well, prepare yourself to tackle the danger at Darkshelf Quarry. Hi everyone, I'm Garrett, and today we're going to talk about a Danger at Darkshelf Quarry. So let's get the rundown out of the way. Danger at Darkshelf Quarry is a 22-page module for AD&D First Edition, written by Skip Williams. The adventure is designed for 6 to 8 characters. It's quite a lot of characters. This was the case in First Edition for levels kind of 1 to 3. Now, what makes this adventure kind of secret and interesting, or really secret's a bit of a kind of overstatement, but often overlooked, is that it was first published in 2013 as part of this anniversary collection of the A series of modules entitled Scourge of the Slavelords. And the module, as far as I can tell, is still only available as part of this collection. The module code is A0, and Danger at Darkshelf Quarry acts as a kind of introduction and prequel to the events of the rest of the Slavelord series, the rest of the kind of A series of modules. Now, before we dive right in, let me just lay out my bona fides, my interactions with this module. So I bought this when I was at university, along with the anniversary copy of the S series of modules, because that's what Wizard of the Coast did for, I think it was the 40th anniversary of D&D. Then they released these kind of like anniversary collections. I've already reviewed Expedition from the Barrier Peaks from that S series collection. You can see that actually if you click up here. Now, unlike the S series, I've not actually run every module in this collection, but I have run Danger at Darkshelf Quarry twice. I ran it once as a kind of mini campaign 3-shot for 2nd edition AD&D, and then as part of a wider campaign, but still low level, for old school essentials, and I ran that online during the pandemic. So what's the through line? And why do I think this is a really cool module that, like I said, it's often overlooked, and I think people really should check it out? Well, the party visit the village of Darkshelf, and Nystor, the village kind of like overlord, is concerned that something isn't right about the nearby quarry. The quarry, Darkshelf Quarry, primarily mines granite and limestone and has been doing really well recently. And that's because the management of the quarry has recently been given to a kind of flame-haired dwarf called Basili Erak. When the dwarf took over, he had a guardhouse, a kind of sort of fortification built next to the quarry that overlooks the kind of quarry itself. The quarry is attached to a mine to better guard the area from bandits and marauding monsters. And there's plenty of that in this module. Now, Basile, one thing that he does is that he employs a night shift of miners. There's human miners during the day, but a night shift of miners who are exclusively dwarves. Now, what Nysa is concerned about, and the villagers explain, is that they never see these dwarves, this night shift, enter or leave the mines or the quarry. And Nystor finds all of this really kind of like strange and shifty. There are 2 other causes for concern for Nystor as well. Recently, a band of slavers were successfully attacked, arrested, and executed with help from Basili and his dwarves. The dwarves kind of like performed a night raid on the slavers camp and rounded them up and executed several of them and arrested others. But Nystor feels that this all went kind of far too smoothly. There's something not quite right. And then finally, the last thing that concerns him is that mutilated and chewed bodies of peasants keep turning up in and around a river nearby the quarry. Now, for Game Masters only, what is actually going on here? Well, Basili Erak, the dwarf mine manager, is actually a half-orc, half-dwarf named Bubgrok, who is a procurer of people for a large network of slavers. Remember, the module series is about destroying a kind of slaving group. His dwarf miners are actually goblins in disguise, and deep beneath the mine is a network of caves that are used as holding areas for a kind of captured people that have been kind of like captured by the slavers to be transported off into slavery. Now, these caves connect to a nearby river. Also, within the mine, the slavers have been using and trying to tame a particularly vicious group of animals known as mud tigers. Now, some of these mud tigers have escaped into the waterway, and they're what's responsible for the recent appearance of mutilated bodies in and around the river. Really, really cool. They're kind of like big cats, well, they're like tigers, but with kind of like webbed feet and kind of the bottom halves of kind of like crayfish. Really, really cool. So it's up to the characters to explore the environment of this module. It is very sandboxy, slowly putting together what's going on. It's like really, really, really fantastic stuff. I really like this module. It's something that every time I've run it, it's really, really good. So what specifically do I like about this module? Let's get the easy stuff out of the way first. It's a great module. There's 66 keyed locations split across the kind of mine quarry and the guardhouse, and every location has at least serviceable box text, which I always love. I like box text. I'm a big fan of it. I think, this kind of like idea that box text is a bad idea. I don't know where this has come from. It's really, really good. It neatly captures the whole module, the aesthetic and sensibilities of first edition. It's formatted like a first edition module. And the other thing that, in saying that I want to address immediately is that this module is good on its own. It's really good on its own, in fact. It's not just a sort of greatest hits bonus feature DVD extra as part of a sort of anniversary edition. It's brilliant on its own merits, by its own merits. Skip Williams states in the foreword that this was written as a tribute to the A-Series tournament modules, and it's supposed to be a kind of tournament module itself, but to be honest with you, it doesn't feel like a tournament module at all. I don't really understand why he thinks it's that. It's just more evocative of something like T1, the Village of Homlet. If you're familiar with that module, which I'm sure a lot of you watching this are. Specifically, it's Moathouse Dungeon in that. And the dungeon design in this is fantastic. Both the guardhouse and the mine itself offer the player multiple entrances, which rewards prudent exploration of the area first. I've mentioned before that I think multiple entrances and loops are really important, as sort of proliferated by the great designer Janelle Jacquez. The mine has 3 entrances. The main one, which is a bad idea to go in through, a ventilation shaft, and then in through a kind of underground portion of the river. When I ran this for OSC, the party poked about and found the ventilation shaft, rappelling down into darkness. They spent quite a bit of time creeping about the mine and the upper levels, and as they got deeper, I could have them hear distant cries and sobs, the sound of the soon-to-be slaves rising from the deeper levels. It reminded me, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it reminded me of the Nashkel mines in Baldur's Gate 1, where there's like the kobolds like deeper down and there's like the villain right at the bottom, but at the top it's still kind of like an operating mine. How in the upper levels, like there are human miners vaguely aware of some greater danger that lives deep within the tunnels. And we know how it goes, right? Too greedily, too deep, as it were. Now, the same party were eventually surprised by a group of goblins, who in turn were surprised. While they're exploring the mines, the 2 groups ran into each other, and it turned into a bit of a scrap, where both sides ended up fighting after a round of mutual surprise. And some of the goblins managed to escape. The party had to hew them down, but a few of the goblins managed to escape, and they rushed back to the surface, as did the players. The players escaped back up through the ventilation shaft. They hid themselves in and amongst the wilderness for several days. They didn't want to go back to the village because they felt like that might put them at danger. It's stated in the module that Bubgrok has goblin warg riders act as patrols on the random encounter tables. They can come up to see if anyone's poking about, but also to see, to kind of capture player characters. I got these guys to start chasing down my player characters now that the secret of the mine was kind of starting to unravel for Bubgrok. What was more fun, however, was that the party eventually kind of circled back round to the mines and rested near the river, where I could have a mud tiger attack them and kind of telegraph the presence of the mud tigers before they found them in the caves. Now, they eventually stole their way into the bottom level of the mine, and finally they kind of realized what was going on, or they pieced together enough to go, this is really, really bad, leading to a climactic confrontation with the slavers and a group of allied cultists who Bubgrok's working with. There's cultists on the lower level that worship the Elder Elemental Eye, and this is one of the instances where Williams situates like nice links with Greyhawk here, obviously with the Elder Elemental Eye. We're talking about Tharizdun and the T1 to 4, the Temple of Elemental Evil. Now, from a design point of view, there are lots of loops in this dungeon: trash chutes, tunnels, ladders, kind of pits that can be climbed in and out of, etc. That all lead to different areas, which gives reasons for player characters to keep exploring. There is clearly, and this is a really, really, really important thing, no optimal route through the mines that Williams is wanting a player to take, which adds to the verisimilitude and gives players agency. The dungeon also believably contains a few factions that the slavers. So that there contains a few factions of the slavers and the clerics, who are technically working together, as well as a group of troglodytes working together with sentries. There's also a section where there's kind of like a group of undead creatures, some ghouls and some zombies and everything, and it's all done in a way that is fairly believable, within the context of the game world. There's a couple of small mechanical morsels which I enjoyed when reading this, such as there's really clear rules for how players experience cold water shock if they go swimming in the kind of cold subterranean water of the lower levels. I really like the blend in this module of classic dungeoneering and monsters such as goblins and troglodytes, which are blended with a couple of novel ideas and elements like the mud tigers. There's nothing here that, as far as I'm concerned, commits that really cardinal sin that, especially in the old school Renaissance, I think is pretty common of, just sticking loads of weird gonzo stuff in for its own sake, which to me kind of always comes across as self-indulgent. No, this is the familiar mixed with a few interesting and unique ideas, and I think that works for this module's real kind of benefit. It's a good thing. So what did I change, if anything, and what concerns would a Game Master have if you decide to run Danger at Darkshelf Quarry? Well, I do think there is a couple of things you need to keep in mind and consider, and there are a couple of things that are a bit weaker about the module that you probably just want to pass. Now, I really enjoy this module. I think it gives us a really cool twist on something familiar with NPCs and villains that have sensible and interesting motivations, and I think it is a better first module to the A series than A1 is. I think, if you're going to run the A series, you should definitely run this. Having said that, I really did have to read this, at least the opening, a couple of times to kind of get my head around all the machinery of the module. There's quite a lot going on, to kind of break out this the idea of the dwarf, who's actually a half-orc, who's a slaver, who helped destroy a ring of slavers, but is also running a mine really successfully, but is also using that mine for something else. And there's human miners in the mine that don't know what's going on, and there's like goblin miners that are actually dwarf miners in the mine that do know what's going on. It's a little bit, it kind of took me a little while to pass all that information. So you got to make sure you get all that clear in your head before you turn up to the table, because there is kind of quite a lot to get my head around. I wish there'd have been a video like this that was talking through it, because it would have made it way easier to understand. Secondly, Darkshelf Village is not covered anywhere in the module. Now, this is a positive for me. I wanted to place the scenario in my own setting, which I imagine is a lot of what you guys and gals are going to want to do. So I don't need the details of a small village in Greyhawk. If I did, I'd just go to Homlet or somewhere like that, or Lay or something like that from against the cult of the reptile god. If I wanted a small village, don't need that. But the opening does do something I consider a module writing sin. It gives us a conversation as box text. No, don't ever do that. I've talked about why I think that this doesn't work in my review of If Looks Could Kill for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. You can see that if you click up here. I think perhaps Williams is playing into the idea of this being a tournament module, and he just wants to kind of get the players going as quickly as possible, but still, don't do it. Don't have conversations as box text. It makes me cry. I mean, let me just read the opening two sets of box text and the kind of GM interlude between it, so you can have a look. Here it is. Just bear with me, because two things. The village overlord is a stocky middle-aged man with a greying hair and a beard to match. The results from the quarry seem too good to be true, he says. And the raid on the slavers' camp was a little too quick and clean, if you ask me. He starts counting on his fingers as he paces back and forth across the room. And then there's the dwarves that work in the quarry at night, but that nobody ever sees. And of course, there's been terrible attacks we've had around Darkshelf. He turns to face you. Something's not right at that quarry. Will you look into it for us? If the characters ask whether anyone else has investigated the quarry, he hesitates before admitting that he did send another agent. It wasn't so much the quarry as it was the attacks. I sent a man named Quan out to find what's been killing our people and leaving the bodies looking half chewed up. He brought me a few reports, but I haven't seen him or heard from him in a while now. Nystor's face becomes grim. Frankly, I'm worried. I'm hoping that by looking into the quarry, maybe you'll find Quan alive, I mean. God, what if they don't ask about this? Knowing that the party knowing that somebody else has previously had this job and has gone missing is actually really important, and it's also a really good hook. The other thing is that while Williams does give us some hooks, they're a bit sort of thin. Let's actually kind of go back to what they are. Let's actually have a look at what the hooks that he does give us. What the local quarry is doing really, really well, and we cleanly arrested and executed a slaver's ring. I need you to look into this series of successes. Something is clearly fishy here. No, they just, sorry, but those hooks aren't good enough for my players. I told them explicitly and upfront that Quan, the missing adventurer, had gone missing near the quarry. Told them that they had to go and find him. That was what Nice was asking them for, not this kind of like weird kind of like everything's going too well. And then the main task became finding Quan. And I would really recommend if you run this, you do this, just tell them straight away that Quan is missing. Or maybe even go further than that and say that I don't trust this dwarf, and I think I think I need you to investigate him because of X, Y, Z. It gives the players a reason to keep exploring the mine, even if they become aware of kind of some of its malevolent uses. It doesn't take long for them to figure out that everything isn't exactly kind of kosher. Everything there's some things that are a bit kind of dodgy that need sorting out. So that just about wraps up my thoughts and experiences running and successfully playing a Danger at Darkshelf Quarry. I think it's a really strong module with a lot going on and certainly worth picking up now, like really worth picking up now. I'll put a link to kind of drive through to the collection below so you can get it there if you like. I'd be really interested to know your thoughts on this overlooked old school module. Maybe like me, you've run it. If either of those things are true, drop a comment below and let me know. It's really, really good. I like the kind of interaction with you guys who are watching. And below you can find links to a free copy of my OSR adjacent rule set, Journeyman Expert Master, and some pre-generated characters for that system, as well as the modules I've written for it. So finally, and as ever, whether you found this useful or interesting, or you've just enjoyed sitting a while and listening, please like and subscribe. Do all that good stuff. I'm Gary. And I'll speak with you again soon. Thank you.